asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Everybody is in better form when the sun is shining. Blue skies today. Blue skies. We don't often have blue skies. Even when the sun is out, we don't often have blue skies. But chemtrails are for another show. Let's just dive right on into some of the bigger stories of the day. Do you know, I came across this morning. I'd been out for my run. I'd come back. I'd had a shower. I'd gotten started. And I came across this story about Stephen Nolan, the farmer from Higher Wealton, which I never heard of. It's a place in Lancashire. And I'm based in Lancashire, but I never heard of Higher Wealton. But apparently it's a nice place. And Stephen is a farmer there. And I did mention today, I've always admired farmers. I knew one or two farmers in my time, and they work bloody hard. They do, right? Townies often have a kind of a underlying prejudice towards farmers, right? And I'm a townie, but I spent a little bit of time on farms over the years, and they work hard. They're welcome to it. Well, anyway, I couldn't believe my ears this morning when I heard the talking heads on television saying that Stephen Nolan was contacted by his local council, who informed him that some of his neighbours were giving out. That's a great Irish way of saying they were complaining. They were giving out about his hens and his chickens clucking. They were making too much noise. They were also giving out about the odour emanating from some of the fields near the farm. That wonderful smell of dung that never bothers you when you're in the countryside. We breathe deep of it, don't we? It doesn't bother us. It's a wonderful thing. Life and animals and all of that. But some of this guy's neighbours were complaining about the farm being, well, rather farm-like. They complained about the smell of poo, and they complained about goose droppings on the lanes near the farms. Those goose droppings, complained some of these snowflakes, might get stuck on the car tyres and might in fact cause an accident. This is, when you're listening to this, you say, well, this has gone further than we're used to hearing, so this couldn't be true. But it's true, all right. It's basically townies like me, and possibly like thee, relocating to the countryside, but wanting to experience country life on our own terms. How dare the air sometimes be heavy with the fragrance of cow dung and methane? How dare it? How dare you happen to come across two animals shagging in a field? How dare I be afflicted with that? That's not what I paid £400,000 for my house in the countryside for. This is absolutely true. Do you want to hear the farmer, Stephen Nolan, whose family have farmed that land for generations since back in the 1930s? Here's Stephen, who I think, to be fair to him, I think he's got a terrific sense of humour about the ridiculous snowflakes. Here's Stephen Nolan, the farmer.
My name's Stephen Nolan. We've been down on this farm since the 30s. My family has anyway. So I'm the third generation. Basically, I've put this sign up just to let people know the struggles that we have with neighbours that move into the rural community next to farms that don't like farming. Everything we do, we get complained about, fought. They fight us all the way, but you're not going to stop us. We're going to farm as long as we want to do, and this is what the sign's about, really. We're going to farm, and that's what we're going to do, and we're not going to stop.
Go on, Stephen. Go on, Stephen. His sign is terrific, really, by the way. It says on the sign, notice this property is a farm. Farms have animals. Animals make funny sounds. Animals sometimes smell. Animals have sex outdoors. Unless you can tolerate the above, don't buy property next to a farm. It's like people going to exotic locations and sometimes travelling in the third world and demanding first world comforts, getting completely and utterly agitated, irritated, annoyed and angry because you don't have flushing toilets in the bush, or in the jungle. I experienced this many years ago because I travelled in Central America back in 2002, and I travelled into some pretty heavy country, and I was with some Americans and I was with some Scandinavians, and they never stopped bitching about the fact that they didn't have certain amenities. You're in the Amazon, love. They don't have that stuff here. Snowflakes, by the way, and I mentioned this today, not exclusive to millennials. Snowflakes can be anybody, and they can be of any age. It's mad stuff, isn't it? It's mad that you couldn't look in the mirror and see that there's something deeply wrong with you before phoning the local council to say, come here, there's some smell of shit around the corner from my house. Well, there would be. You're living next door to Alice, to a farm. Right? Jesus Christ, I'd love it. I'd love to have the money to buy in the countryside and get to know that farmer and his family and say to them, do you know what? I don't want any money for it, but let me pitch in every now and then. It might be good for my soul. Do you fancy a bit of virtue signalling charts countdown? Do you fancy a bit of that? I think it's time we did a bit of that because it's been a good week for the virtue signalling. And there's no better way to follow that ridiculous story about snowflakes than with a bit of virtue signalling countdown. So let's do it without further ado. Come on! The sunshine has gone to my head. Right at number 4, then at number 4, it's the hysterical little bollocks himself, the prole pretender extraordinaire, the 21st century's answer to Mary Whitehouse. It's Owen Jones. Here is Owen at a Remoaner conference, remoaning about the fact that Labour has conceded freedom of movement, and that freedom of movement will have to end after Brexit. Munchkin Jones, you see, virtue signals to the moon at every opportunity when it comes to migrants. If you don't love immigrants as much as this clown, well then you're quite simply a racist. Owen Jones at number 4.
Now, we were up against a campaign, a vicious, racist, bigoted, anti-immigrant campaign, which portrayed immigrants as criminals and rapists and murderers. And the day of that referendum result was the worst day politically for many of us in our lives, because it represented a carnival of reaction where the most bigoted and racist anti-immigrant elements of our society were vindicated, and they celebrated that result with surging hate crimes on
We're
the
all
streets
bigots.
as they believe that small racist violent minority that they had a mandate to abuse and attack people who are from minorities and from other countries. Now, the Labour Party today is led by people with lifelong, impeccable anti-fascist and anti-racist credentials. But the issue of freedom of movement has been conceded, and that isn't right.
Owen Jones at number 4 there. I don't know what you'd call that song, but that was Owen Jones at number 4 there. Coming in at number 3, well, this is a brand new entry, somebody we've not heard from before. It's new entry Luciana Berger, the Liverpool Wavertree MP, identifies as Jewish, and she's horrified at the abuse and anti-Semitism that's overrunning society and her party. It's Luciana Berger.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a duty to the next generation. Denial is not an option. Prevarication is not an option. Being a bystander who turns the other way is not an option. The time for action is now. Enough really is enough. And I just want to conclude with the very eloquent words of the former Chief Rabbi, Dr. Jonathan Sachs. And he said, an assault upon Jews is an assault upon difference. And a world that has no room for difference has no room for humanity itself.
Yes! Yeah. She's going places, that kid. Number 3, Luciana Berger, not to be outdone though. Flying past her on the rails into number 2 is Ruth Smeeth. Ruth is a Stoke-on-Trent MP. She also identifies as Jewish. Her meaningless, monotonous monologue on Jewishness and anti-Semitism almost made it to number 1, but not quite. At number 2, it's Ruth Smeeth.
I'm not just speaking for me, but for the young Jewish people I meet across the country who are beginning to fear they don't have a place. Young people who are braver and tougher and better than you and than I could ever be. There is something more fundamental at stake here than any party's policy platform or electoral performance. The right of Jewish people to participate in the politics of our country as equals. Madam Deputy Speaker, last month we heard a plea. Enough is enough. I stand here today to say that we will not be bullied out of political engagement. We are going nowhere, and we stand and will keep fighting until the evils of anti-Semitism have been removed from our society.
Yes! Brilliant stuff. I know what you're thinking. The number one has to be special. Brilliant from Ruth Meath. What could possibly be number one? Well, the number one is special. It's short, but it's also very sweet. It's the Scottish National Party MP for Cumbernauld, Stuart C. MacDonald. This guy is solid gold. He was surrounded by virtue signalling masters in the debate about the Windrush generation the other day. The folks from the Caribbean whose landing papers were burned by Theresa May. Personally, maybe not. This rookie, Stuart C. MacDonald, was beset on all sides by world champion virtue signallers, but he destroyed them. He destroyed them with this comment about ending hostility for migrants. Stuart C. MacDonald at number one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Isn't the key point in all of this that the pernicious hostile environment impacts on everybody, whether they're here legally or otherwise? You can hardly get out your bed these days without somebody asking to see your passport. Isn't it time to scrap the hostile environment?
Yes! You can hardly get out of your bed these days without someone asking to see your passport. Fantastic stuff from Stuart C. MacDonald coming in this week as number one. That concludes the Virtue Signalling Top 4 countdown for Thursday. It's the 19th of April 2018.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppet.
On the Muppet Show tonight, right at 17 minutes past the hour. Don't forget Dr. Eric T. Carstrom joins the programme real soon, and we'll be talking about something very serious, and that is organised gang stalking. What it is, why it's going on, who's behind it, the technology used. And it's been around 9-10 months since Eric was on the programme. About time we got him back to have a chat with him, so we'll do that real soon. Shall we move on then? 17 and a half minutes past the hour. Israel celebrated her 70th birthday today. No, we won't be playing Stevie Wonder's Happy Birthday, his tribute to MLK or anything like that. There is an article about this on richieallen.co.uk. I recommend you check it out, have a read of it, take it apart, criticise it, agree with it, do whatever. But before we talk a little bit about it, not a lot about it, you might want to hear, you might not want to hear from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's delighted that Israel celebrates her 70th birthday. Here's the nutty one, I think recorded late last night. It sounds it anyway.
This year Israel celebrates its 70th anniversary. That's 70 years of freedom, 70 years of democracy, 70 years of bettering the world. Israel's success didn't happen overnight. Men and women from every walk of life, young and old, Jew, Christian, Muslim, religious and secular, men and women that have worked hard to build our nation. As I travel around the world, meeting other leaders, I'm struck by their appreciation and admiration for Israel.
Well, you're not really, Benjamin. They're owned lock, stock and barrel by your agents, Zionist agents, lobbyists, pretty much in every Western country in the world. So you're not horrified that they are wishing you well and wishing Israel well for the next 70 years. More from the nutty one.
They seek Israel's technology. They seek Israel's ingenuity. They seek Israel's genius. I'm proud that Israel is helping people in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and in many other places to live healthier and safer lives. Here's the best part. We're just getting started. 70 years is the blink of an eye in historical terms. And I have no doubt that 70 years from now, Israel will be even stronger, even more prosperous than it is today. Thank you to our many friends around the world. Happy birthday, Israel.
Happy birthday, Israel. We won't sing Happy Birthday, Israel. Wrote about it today. The mainstream media in this country was strangely, and I do mean strangely, very, very quiet on this story. I thought we'd be inundated today with comment and with political virtue signalers rushing to the nearest microphone to talk about the most vibrant democracy in the Middle East, which it isn't, of course. I'm not going to repeat what it is. It gets old. We know what Israel is. But very little talk about it today. The Telegraph newspaper did run an opinion piece of sorts by the Israeli president, who's a man called Reuven Rivlin. And he wrote this laughable piece in the Telegraph about what a wonderful, virtuous paradise on earth Israel is, when of course it isn't. And I wrote about what he was saying, and it's on richieallen.co.uk if you want to see it. But maybe you've seen more of it today than I have. Maybe you've noticed it being covered in your news bulletins or in your newspapers, but I've seen scant coverage of it today. And I wonder why that is. It's not as if the newspapers and television programs that we are used to, it's not as if they don't support Israel. They do, of course. But not much coverage of it today. We'll leave it alone. Anyway, that article, richieallen.co.uk, if you do want to take a look at it. Now, The Resident on RT America is a very interesting programme, and they often talk about technological developments. Excuse me. Been drinking a lot of water. Excuse me. That doesn't happen very often. And The Resident deals with tech improvisations, tech developments. And they covered this story about Google, which is apparently on the cusp of presenting technology to the world that will enable whomever has possession of it to hear you or to hear me in a crowd of people. It could be in a high street, it could be on a high street, it could be in a concert. Technology that will be able to zoom in on you or me, not read lips, but drown everything else out and hear very clearly what you and I are saying. Here's The Resident clip. Have a listen. This is very interesting indeed.
As human society continues to freak out about what it has wrought through technology, Google continues its march toward being an all-knowing, all-powerful global entity. The latest news is that now it's learning to single out voices in a crowd, to eavesdrop on anything anyone is saying, even when they're surrounded by a bunch of noisy people. Tech Times reports that Google researchers have created a deep learning system that can single out voices by watching people's faces when they're talking. The researchers describe the new effort in a paper entitled "Looking to Listen at the Cocktail Party." In a blog post, they say that they can look at a video of a bunch of people, select any one of their faces, and isolate what that one person is saying, removing the noise of everyone else talking, or sirens, or other noises going on in the video. So imagine you're walking through Times Square, having a conversation with a friend. There are thousands of cameras, which can already watch you, right? But now with this new technology, whoever is watching you can also listen to what you're saying. They can drown out all the other noises and just listen to whatever you and your friend are talking about in the cacophony of Times Square. Now, they're still refining the technology. It's not like it's already in place, but the researchers are pressing on and say it won't be long before their tech goes to work. Tech Times mentions uses like when you're in a Google Hangout. The technology can amplify the voice of the person talking to make it easier to hear. The tech could also be used to help people who have hearing issues. But Tech Times also mentions the privacy issues of the technology, which are pretty terrifying, like the Times Square scenario. Clearly, our privacy is invaded all the time by the millions of security cameras everywhere. If those cameras can figure out what we're saying just by watching our faces, that invasion of privacy just got that much worse.
Well, of course it did. And Google, married with the technological wing of the Pentagon, which is known as DARPA, with their revolving door attitude towards staff, right? Google is not there to make life easier for you and me, and to make searching on the internet that much easier, to present us with wonderful entertainment and all of that. No, it isn't. It's there, Google, and as far as I'm concerned, its only real purpose is to herald in, to bring about the transhumanist society in the coming 50, 60, 70 years. That's what Google was set up for. This stuff is hilarious to me when it comes out. Oh, they've developed this technology where you can be watching the Rolling Stones at Wembley Stadium and they've got a machine and it can drown out Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and everything else and the person sitting next to you, and it can hear what you're saying. This is Google. It's supposed to be a search engine, right? Wrong. It's far more than that. 25 minutes past the hour. We'll take a quick break. It's Thursday's programme. People are melting. They're melting. They're wilting. They're collapsing in a heap. They're rushing to the off licence. Don't do that, by the way. If the heat has gotten to you today, and it has been like 27, 28 degrees in the southeast of the UK, which isn't anything remotely like the temperatures I became accustomed to in my 8.5 years in Spain, but it's warm when you're not used to it. Don't go drinking. It's not going to do you any good drinking alcohol. At least wait till it cools down a bit before you have your cold beer or your rum and coke, as the case might be.